All right, today we're going to start talking about exponential functions. So our focus for learning is given the equation of an exponential function, I can create a table. Given a table for an exponential function, I can write an equation. So we're going to look at two different representations of exponential functions, equations and tables. And we're going to learn how to find key properties of exponential functions from both the table and from the equation. So we'll start with our equation. The general equation for an exponential function is y equals a times b raised to the x power. So we're going to kind of diagram this equation so we know what the a represents, what the b represents, and what the exponent in this equation represents. So a is going to be our initial value or our starting point. B is our multiplier. And then the x is our exponent. So y equals a times b raised to the x power. A is our initial value or our starting point. B is our multiplier, and then the x is the exponent. Remember, an initial value or a starting point is also known as a y-intercept. All right, so our initial value is the y value when x is equal to 0. So that initial value, the a in our exponential function in the equation, that is our initial value, our starting point, or our y-intercept. It's the y value when x is equal to 0. Now to find the multiplier, which remember the multiplier is our b value in y equals a times b raised to the x power. To find that multiplier, we take any y value in our table and we divide it by the previous y value. All right, so now given the equation y equals 2 raised to the x power, we're going to create a table of values. So here we're starting with the equation and we're going to create the table. So if we have y equals 2 raised to the x power, and in our table here, our xy table, we're given values of x. What we need to do in order to figure out what the y value is when x is equal to -2 is we need to take our values of x here and substitute them into our exponential function. So we're going to substitute those values in for x. So for the first entry in our table here, if x is -2, well that's going to turn into -2 to the -2 to the -2nd power, because we're taking our original equation here, y equals 2 raised to the x power, and we're substituting in these pink values of x. So 2 to the -2nd power, you can use Desmos to help you evaluate that. That's equal to 1/4. Because remember from our exponent rules that we just learned, when we have a negative exponent, we rewrite the reciprocal of the fraction and we make the exponent positive. Then you're just going to continue to do the same thing. So I want you right now, the video is going to pause. You're going to take these values for x and substitute them into your exponential function to fill in the table. All right, your table should be filled in now. So now we'll go ahead and go through the answers. So when x is -1, we get 2 to the -1st power, which Desmos helps us figure out is 1/2. Now when we substitute 0 in for x, remember anything other than 0 raised to the 0 power is 1. So 2 to the 0 power is 1. When we put 1 in for x into our exponential function, y equals 2 to the 1st power, which is just 2. And then when we put 2 in for x in our exponential function, we get y equals 2 raised to the 2nd power, which is 4. So we were given an equation. We use substitution to help create a table of values. All right, now in the second example, we're given the table of values and we need to go ahead and write an exponential equation. So I just put right here our general exponential equation. Remember, it's y equals a times b raised to the x power. Now, in order to write this equation, we need to figure out what our initial value is, or our starting point, and what our multiplier is. in our final answer here, we're going to have y and we're going to have x. The exponent here is just going to be x in these general examples. So we need to figure out the initial value and we need to figure out the multiplier. If we go back, we already went over our initial value is the y value when x is 0. So let's go ahead and look at our table here, and we want to look for the entry where x is 0. Oops. Okay, so we see right here, x is 0. When x is 0, our y value is 6. So that tells us that our initial value, our starting point, our y-intercept is 6. So A is equal to 6. Our initial value is 6. So when we start to write our equation, we know it's going to be y equals 6. And we still have to figure out the rest of it, but we know that A value is 6. Now, to figure out the multiplier, if we go back in our notes, it says to find the multiplier, you take any y value in your table and divide it by the previous y value. So let's do that. Let's use this y value of 6 because we're already looking at it. If I can get my pen here, maybe. Okay, so we have our y value of 6. We're already looking at that. And we're going to divide it by the previous y value, so the one that comes directly before it in the table. So that would give us 6 divided by 18. And we want to keep this as a fraction. Just like in linear equations, we kept slope as a fraction. In exponential equations, we're going to keep this multiplier as a fraction. So 6 divided by 18, if we want to simplify that fraction, that would be 1/3. And again, Desmos can help you with that simplification. So now we know our multiplier, or our b value, is 1/3. And once we have that, we know everything we need to actually finish writing our equation. So y equals 6, because 6 was our initial value, times 1/3 raised to the x power. And we're going to go ahead and put that multiplier in parentheses to show the multiplication. So all we had to do to write our equation here was look at our table, find the initial value, and find the multiplier, and substitute those in for a and b in our exponential equation. Now we have an equation that matches this table. So what you're going to do next, you're going to see an assignment on Google Classroom. It's a Google Slides assignment, and it is matching tables to the equation. So we just went over how to make a table from an equation, and we went over how to write an equation from a table. Remember, you also have Desmos to help you. So what you're going to do, there are 18 of these problems in the Google slideshow. You're going to match the tables to the appropriate equation. Now, on each slide, you have 6 options. You have 6 tables and 6 equations. Everything on the first slide will be matched. Every table on the first slide matches to an equation that's also on the first slide. So like on your first slide that looks like this, A, B, C, D, E, F, all of these tables go with one of these 6 equations that are on the first slide.